Hello, everybody. How
Mm,
is everybody doing? Like, seriously, just in general.
unwell.
Yes.
I just have this
So there's gonna
lingering stomach ache. I'm just salty. I'm like the rim of a margarita glass
and
is my
I
life
am
status right now.
I like that because that means we're drinking tequila.
Yeah, that one just popped into my head, and that's what I'm gonna start saying to people and see if they pick up on it. Instead of just saying I'm
Love it.
salty, I'm just gonna say I am the rim of a margarita glass.
Love it. That's what I will be saying as well.
Because I also fucking love
Copy.
glass, so
Well, welcome
hello.
everybody for those in the US. I feel like some of you will agree with that sentiment. Other people will not. They will be feeling happy or excited about the future. And ironically, today on Interesting as Fuck, we are talking about disagreeing with people
Yeah. No, we're
because
not.
no, it's my way or the highway. Um, because frankly, you will not meet people that agree with you all the time. And I think this was the last 2 weeks that we've been living. Whether you are happy or not happy, you will meet people who don't agree with you, right? So I think we wanted to tackle this episode post US election for a particular reason.
Yes.
And not because of the politics of it, but because of the art of disagreeing. And I think there's a lot of research out there that people are, and I think it's an advent of social media, algorithms, and all of that. We are not confronted a lot of the time anymore with people that don't agree with us. And I think that we lose a lot there. I think losing a lot with the ability to disagree with people. Um, and our own arguments about what is right, wrong, or what the opinion should be get weaker because we cannot defend our opinions because everybody agrees with you. So I think that's something that we should really be thinking about more as we go into kind of this new version of the world. Um, and today we're going to talk about three places where disagreements might come up and how potentially you can discuss it, how you can exit it, how you can enter it, and how you can actually have a conversation that gets you to maybe potentially a better place of understanding of each other's views. And I think that's work, friends, and family. And we'll leave the doozy of a family at the end.
Yeah, I think, Linda, the phrasing you used was the art of disagreement is so interesting because there's a piece of it's not just, the algorithms, but there's also like and this started before COVID, but I think COVID made it so much worse, is, the the art of disagreeing respectfully was lost, um, continues to go out the window because the confidence that people have, and even though like you post under your own name, the anonymity of not having to say what you're writing to someone's face makes people feel emboldened to say some pretty crazy things. And I mean crazy in the terms of like not even related to politics. And if it is politics, it's on either end, both sides. It's the viciousness that comes out when people
Viciousness.
feel like they have the protection of being behind a computer screen. And I completely agree. Like the art of disagreement and having respectful disagreement is out the window. And there's nothing I loved more than having constructive, respectful conversations with people who didn't agree with me, because you then learn why somebody who you might work with or have in your family or be friends with or someone you don't or you aren't all that close to and probably and may never be close to, but like you may learn their perspective and their you may find out that this person is incredibly well versed on this topic and you're never going to change each other's minds, but now you have a better understanding and can respect each other's views. I think we've also lost nuance. Like, not everything has to be so black and white. There are gray areas to a lot of issues, and not everything has to be on one side or all or nothing. And I think we've lost that as well. And so, um, I think we have some interesting examples in each of these scenarios. And I think, Linda, I will hand it off to you to kind of kickstart, if you want to go into our first area of
Yeah. Happy
confrontation.
happy to. Work. I think we are going into a season of thinking about how we operate in the workplace. And I think disagreements at work is actually a much more important example sometimes, because sometimes you disagree on a strategy or the way you deal with a partner or the way you deal with,
A budget,
a budget.
a like, it could be something as, like, concrete as numbers or, like, how you're gonna spend
Yep.
money, not even so much like a corporate strategy or, like, some, like, existential type of thing, but yeah,
E
that's gonna happen.
exactly. That's gonna happen. It happens every day. It's happening to you. It's happening to me. I think it's a thing where we really have to think about what is the end goal. And I think with work, it's a lot easier to deal with. I think disagreements because in the end, it's frankly in the end all about interests, right? So, what is the interest of if you're disagreeing with your boss? Is this a battle you want? Is this the hill you want to kind of fight on, like die on, and go, to the hilt, fighting for where your budget goes, for example. And I think that's you always have to at work. I think when you start disagreeing, you have to remember what the interest is, what your interest is, what your superior's interest is, and what the company's interest is in the long run. I don't think particularly that the workplace is a place for political discussions, and only because at work it's about policy. I mean, Elaine and I work in a policy environment, so we really actually just talk about policy, and politics kind of bleeds into that. But if you take it from an analytical standpoint, you become so detached from it that it becomes a lot easier to disagree. I think why disagreements are so difficult is because you become emotional about it. You're
Yeah.
connecting yourself to the topic. And once you connect yourself to the topic, I think it becomes a lot harder to disagree. And that's okay.
Mhm.
That's okay. It's not bad to be emotional about a topic or not. But in our view, I think work is not the place to do that. Now, if you're fighting, for example, something that you see as unjust, a policy that's unjust, I think that, again, look at the interests, make the business case, because in a corporation or in a business, it's mostly about where the bottom line is, what the interest is, and learning to go, I don't believe that this policy is appropriate for our employees. And these are the reasons why, right? So you
Yep.
come, and that's, I think, how you disagree in the workplace. You have a justification, and then you go, whose interest it serves the most. Um, and then that's kind of my view on like disagreement at work. I know, Elaine, you want to bring something up.
Well, yeah, and I think there's a difference too between, like, what you're saying in terms of, like, I don't agree with this bylaw or policy or the way that someone's being treated specifically and making the business case or the HR complaint or whatever it is, and then there's a difference between that and then, like, talking personal politics at work, you
Yeah.
know, which is, I think, an important distinction to make because I think the one you were most recently talking about, like changing a policy or changing a bylaw, excuse me, I think that's worth fighting for in right? Like in some cases, if you're just fighting everything and that's one thing, but, yeah, the personal politics at work becomes very difficult and would not like 0 out of 10 would not recommend.
0 it is. I do not recommend. And this is from people who talk politics pretty much every single day, all the time. And
Yeah, we have to be
I
very diplomatic and nonpartisan about it, which is kind of
but
fun
this is the
because it's
thing.
a challenge
It's fu
sometimes.
but that's the thing. We're better for it. We're
Yeah,
better for having conversations around how we think an interest of a certain group is improved by certain policies or not,
or just
right? We've
impacted positive or negative.
exactly. So I think
Yeah,
I think that's what I mean at work again, it can be done, right? It can be done. But if you're not well versed in it, if you don't do it every day, I 0 out of stars would recommend, right? 0 out of 5 stars would not recommend. But I think, disagreeing at work, there's still places for it. Uh,
sure.
there's still things to do. And if you don't want to disagree at work, that's okay too, right? If you say, this is what my boss said and I'm going to implement it. But 9 times out of 10, you'll find yourself in a situation where you want to disagree and you want to say, but don't go in there and say, "I disagree with you." You have to disagree with a reason. You have to disagree
Mhm.
with like kind of a set of arguments to go, "Hey, this is not the right way to do this."
And I
And I
also
think
think
that's
sometimes people just get
yeah,
so charged about it, like, you don't have to go in guns blazing either. You can literally just sit again, this is this art of, like, respectful disagreement, like, you can we've said it to each other on this, where we'd be like, "You know what? I don't necessarily agree with that, but here," and then you immediately launch into why. It's just because, like, people have different perspectives, different life experiences, and different reasoning. Like, there's nothing wrong with
yeah.
disagreeing with somebody. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I think in the key thing is not identifying with your opinions.
Yeah,
And that is, I think, where your opinions are not who you are. They make up who you are, but they're not who you are.
right.
Right. And I think with why this is becoming trickier is because we have all of the, non-binary LGBTQ issues that are actually LGBTQ plus issues that are coming up, and they're becoming an actual issue for a lot of a lot of people, not only in the US but everywhere, where it's becoming an identity thing, right? For
Mhm.
them, they are fighting for themselves. And I think that's what you see perhaps at like work, right? If somebody is non binary or gay and they think a policy is discriminatory, of course they're going to get emotionally charged about that. And that's not a bad thing. But people have to realize that that's going to have, at work specifically, if you don't distance yourself and go, this is why this is good, that becomes a lot harder for you to make concrete arguments for somebody who doesn't understand your experience.
Right. It's about the approach.
Yeah. And I think that's at work, it's about the approach and not identifying yourself and
Yeah.
personalizing your opinions or your disagreements. So if your boss says no because of how you decided to do your budget, she's like, that's final. He or she says that's final, then it's fine. That's that's what's gonna happen, right? So
Yep.
I think that's I think my general gist of disagreement at work. It's
Yeah.
don't personalize you're not your opinions. Create interests that mutually benefit you and whoever you're disagreeing with, and don't go into politics.
Like, as a profession, as a
Yeah.
topic, just don't do
No, we
it.
need more people. We need more people in politics. Politics is a contact sport, everybody.
Oh my god, and it's our local. Run for local election.
Local. Run for local election. We can help you.
All politics
Email
is local.
us. I
So we
think
can
we have
read
an
it.
echo.
Like, legitimately have
There's
an echo? Or are you just an echo, echo, echo?
no, it's just like local. All
Oh,
politics is
local,
local.
local. All politics is local.
That too. That's what I heard.
Was that the echo?
Yeah, that
Loco.
was the echo. Loco. Um, but yeah, I think that's kind of my, at least, in
I agree.
general, I think once you get so emotionally charged and to the emotional chargedness of this, comes when you start having conversations with
Friends.
friends and family. And that's, I think, an okay time to get emotional, right? But don't
Yes.
say shit you regret.
Yeah.
If you are, like, for example, some people are insulters when they get angry. I tend to shut down when I get angry and I can't make it an agree. I'll just stop talking. I'll be like, okay, I'll just disengage because if I continue engaging, I just know it's not going to go anywhere well. What's your mechanism?
Oh, I'm stubborn as fuck. I'm Italian. I'm a Sagittarius. Like, I can't back down.
Yeah.
I can't back down unless I really, truly start hearing everybody just talking in circles, and then I'll shut it all down. And I'll be like,
Yeah.
none of this is helping. None of this is progressing. Like, we got to talk about something else, or everybody's got to leave the room and take a beat. Like,
Oh, I just shut down. Just like, okay. And then I come
yeah,
back.
yeah, I just get real stubborn. But like
Mm,
nothing makes me more upset than if I leave an argument. And so here's another distinction I want to make. There's arguments. I think we all default to thinking that like disagreements turn into arguments, and that doesn't always have
mm,
to be the case. I think
nope.
recently here, like it does, which is a shame. Um, but like I get really mad at myself when like I think of it. It's George Costanza. Like I thought of the good comeback way too late, and now
Way too
like
late.
I have to just sit and stew on it and either be like, either there's gonna have to be another opportunity or like I just have to let it die. Um, but yeah, no, I'm just stubborn. And so like I want to, I don't, and not stubborn in the term of like quote unquote win the argument, but just make sure I get all my points across
Yeah.
before the conversation's over. So then I feel like I've gotten everything I need to get out. But again, not every disagreement has to end or start an argument. And I think this, I'll interject this point because this was a really good one. So, one of our very close friends was within our like one of five people, like COVID co quarantine type of closeness. And he came over and he's a very spiritual person. He goes to church all the time, like, and that's not me. That's not our household. That's not, I think I have very strong opinions about institutionalized, organized religions. And
Religion is for the masses.
yes.
Opiate for the masses. That's a Karl Marx to everybody that's close to an election.
Um, but during COVID, like he would come over and we would sit on our front porch and just have a couple cocktails and we would just talk about where we come from, especially on that side of things. Cause I was just like, I'm just so curious as to like why it's such an important part of your life. And he was curious as to why it's not a part of mine. And we are never going to agree on like he's also not someone that's going to come over our house and be like y'all need Jesus, like I know you're not, like he's never going to push it on us, even like now us having a kid, like he's not someone who's been like, you really should get involved in like because he knows he's not going to win that battle with us because he's not trying to have a battle with us. Like he prays for us, he prays for our son, like if that's what he wants to do as a good friend of ours, by all means you do you. But like he now understands and respects fully. He always understood and respected where we were coming from, but we had never had a conversation about it like that before. So we were always going to disagree on this, but we respect the hell out of each other. And now we have an even deeper understanding of where each of us is coming from. And I think that's so important. I think we've lost that so much. We've lost
We've
so much of
lost the art of the bar debate.
that. Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
I I blame phones. Number one,
Yes. Social media, phones, screens.
social media. People not distinguishing between opinions and fact. My
Yes.
opinion on anything that I've said here on this podcast as of now is mostly my opinion. It's my opinion.
It is
That
not
doesn't
rooted in
mean
fact. Just kidding.
it's not, nothing I say is rooted in fact. You've known me long enough for that. But that's the thing. I mean, we can have a disagreement and that's okay as long as you
Yeah,
don't like as long as I'm not imposing my view on you. I'm just telling you, "Hey, I think that XYZ."
and even, like, approaching it as a question, like, we were just kinda sitting around shooting the shit, and then we started getting into some deeper conversations, and then it just somehow turned to religion, and it was one of those things where we kinda stopped and we said, like, "Hey, let me ask you a question, like, where does your spirituality and, like, your faith and your commitment to your church come from? Like, why is that a thing for you?" And then he turned the question right around to me and to us, and I was like, "I'm more than happy to answer that question. Thank you for asking it." Because to just assume or, like, to come at me with, he's equipped with that information, but he doesn't come at me with it as, like, a weapon. He
Yeah.
just wanted to have a better understanding of why we disagree on that.
And I think that's we've made this point before about intent. Intent is
Yes,
so important.
so
You have
important.
people if you're already going into a disagreement with bad intent, you don't
Guns
you
blazing.
don't guns blazing, you don't need to have a debate with that person. You don't
Right,
need to have it just if you're going in like I've gone in like I like to think that I'm good intent, but sometimes I have bad intent. I mean, it's not 100%. We're not 100% virtuous all the time, but
right.
that's the thing. You hope that you are going into an argument with an open mind, with a thought process, and all of that. Like, for example, when a lot of people wonder about, your background or something, people go, well, they're attacking who I am. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. Maybe they've never met somebody from where you come
Yes.
from. And that's usually my everybody goes, oh, you are the first person I've ever met from this place. And so, of course, they're going to have thought processes that don't align with who I am because my particular thought process was shaped in a very different way.
Yeah,
And so of course if I go in thinking, well, this person wants to attack me, of course that's I'm just going to be defensive the whole time. So
right.
I think going into it with friends particularly going I I'm going with this in good intent. You're friends with somebody, you like them for a purpose. I do think also people should be liking and befriending people that don't necessarily think exactly like them either.
It's no
If they
fun if
are
everybody just
it's
agrees with you all the
no
time, honestly. It's
fun.
just not fun.
It's not
It's
fun,
kinda
and
boring.
it also makes you complacent on how you disagree. You don't know
Yes.
how to make an argument anymore.
Yes.
I am a contrarian by nature.
No, you're not.
Like, you 100% fuck you.
Gotcha again.
That you got me. It's my post-election fog. I'll blame everything on my post-election
Just
for the
blame
next
everything
4
on that for,
years.
like, the next
For the
4 years.
next 4 years. Um I think that's like one of the feature traits of my personality that actually help me talk to people because I'll have somebody talk to me and it's something I believe. I agree with them, but I'll just disagree for shits and giggles. I'll be like, "No." Like I had a conversation with somebody that was like, "Well, this person believes X and I shouldn't talk to them." And in my head, I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't talk to them either. But then I'm like, why wouldn't you talk to them? Explain this to me. Because I would talk to them. And then that was a 25-minute conversation around how you talk to people that don't agree with you
Yeah.
and why you would talk to them. Because if you ice people out that don't agree with you, you don't grow at all. You
Yeah, you
become
become very close-minded.
very close-minded and unfortunately everybody I think people on the left are becoming a lot more close-minded than they think they are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like,
And
it's not just a one-party problem.
No, 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 and it's not like it's everywhere,
Every
and you see this globally as well. It's not just in the US. And I think, and for everybody, a great book recommendation is The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. Yes, the same Jonathan Haidt that everybody's talking about his other book, The Anxious Generation, about the cell phones. His book a couple years ago came out, and it's called The Righteous Mind: How Good People Get Divided Over Politics and Religion. And he's a social psychologist, and he explains the reasons as to why people get superheated about things and how morality plays a role in how we view politics and religion. And that, and he does global studies, he sees different cultures. So you really see kind of the same aspects of human psychology that come out around all of this. And anyway, I just think it's fascinating. That's one book rec in these times that I would definitely, tell you to look at, because I think that's where we're falling. We're falling into a moment where we're infusing morality, like whether you are a good person or a bad person, depending on your politics. And if
right.
we do that, and I'm not saying, don't take me out of context, don't coconut me or uncoconut me. I don't know which one it was, but
Put you back in the coconut tree?
put you back in the coconut tree. Anyway, I never understood that one. It was funny,
Yeah,
but I never really got it.
never got
Um,
never got
Never got it. But if you if you start going good or bad doesn't mean anything.
no,
Like unless you're like hurting people, then like it gets
never bad.
that's like that's a hard line in morality, right? Like it becomes when you hurt others or yourself, it becomes like really hard line for everybody on this planet.
Yeah,
So if you're hurting people, that's where like the bad and the good happens. The problem is if you don't start having conversations with people that you quote unquote view as bad, they'll never understand they'll never really understand why they're bad. They'll just
right,
say, well, this person has a thought process and they think I'm X, Y, Z, or whatever we want to say. And then that person will never understand where you're coming from.
right.
And of course, there'll always be people that will not want to hear you. You always have to
Always.
accept that.
Mhm.
Always. But there are people that will.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I have, to go back to one of your earlier points, the place where we work, you do the unconscious bias training. And I'll never
Mhm.
forget, I wrote it down on a sticky note and it sits right next to my desk because I need a reminder of it all the time. But I think it was when you were kind of talking about like people just like kind of coming at you, right? Like the I wrote down MRI, which stood for most respectful interpretation. If you
Mm.
go into each conversation or each situation assuming the person's intention was not coming from a bad place, it becomes easier to let them get to where like to get to their point, to get to their ask, and maybe like you will not have gone to a defensive place as quickly because you let the intent be shown, even if it didn't sound like the intent was going where you think it was going. So I need a reminder all the time to be like, let it be the most respectful interpretation and assume that
Yeah.
this person is coming from a respectful, good place. That doesn't always happen, which is fine. But I'm
We
also
all know that person. We
we
all
all
know that person.
we all know that person. And I also love to play devil's advocate. So not even so much like which like could be, I guess, another phrase for contrarian, but like I don't know. I feel like it keeps my mind sharper. It's also kind of part of our job to be like we have to think outside the box. We have to think of every scenario. Like, okay, what if it doesn't play? What if it is worst case scenario? What if it's best case scenario? What's in between? And so I'm never afraid to play devil's advocate a little bit, even if it goes against what I actually believe, to just make sure that the question is being asked and people have actually thought it through.
Yeah, I also think that We don't identify with our opinions. Like, and I
Yeah.
think that allows growth.
Yes.
You are not your opinions.
No.
They're movable. They change.
Mhm.
You're not flip-flopping, you're evolving. You can think one
Yes, I love
time
that.
that something is
Chocolate ice cream was your
completely
favorite,
it was your
and now
favorite. And
vanilla is
then
your
it's
favorite.
and now that's exactly what an
It
opinion
can be
is.
as
It's
simple as
change.
that.
Yeah.
Like, it can be as simple as that.
Simple as that. And that allows, I mean, not to say that we don't get emotional about arguments, right? I mean, we've all done it. We all do it.
I'm
Especially
very
when
passionate about
when
vanilla ice cream. I'm
very
just saying.
passionate about vanilla ice cream. And in my case, I'm very passionate about chocolate ice cream, so
Oh,
fuck
fuck you
vanilla.
then.
We're doing great. We're fine. We're fine.
Great. Most respectful
And we
interpretation of your stupid
most
fucking chocolate things.
what the hell, vanilla? How bland. But I think I think it becomes you live your life so much better when you allow this most generous interpretation of other people's opinions, but also a most generous interpretation of your opinion. It's
Yeah.
okay to change your mind when you get new information. And I think it's exactly like science, and it's the scientific method. It's I have a theory, we have an established theory, and what we do, we question that theory. We see if
Yeah.
that theory works. And if it doesn't work, then we move forward and we evolve. We change our minds. And I think with friends, it's a lot easier to have those kind of debates to go, hey, these are friends. We don't know them very well. We don't know everything, but it feels like it's a safe space enough to talk about things in a way that you might necessarily not agree on and then still be friends at the end.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to family,
Family, it can get a little bit more complicated.
and by complicated, you mean fucking nuts.
Fucking ridiculous.
And we're heading into the holiday season for a lot of people in the world, to which we have a lot of downtime, to which we are now going to have some pretty shitty discussions around where we think the world is going,
Yes. And
because we have a lot of problems that we're looking
yeah.
at.
And I'm gonna throw this out here from the beginning.
Do it.
Everybody's relationship with their family is not the cleavers. It's not this like picture perfect nuclear family. Okay. It's not. People have just different opinions. And just because I want to throw this out here because I have a lot of friends struggling with this right now. And I struggle with it a little bit too because I'm mentally and emotionally preparing to have to claw the eyeballs out of the men in my family when we go home for Thanksgiving.
What men?
Exactly. Those aren't men. Our husbands are men.
I don't. I'm.
Um,
Jury's still out over here, at least. I
but
literally. I'll tell you the story.
just because you were born into the family you were born into does not mean you have to put up with toxic situations. If it is toxic, remove yourself. You don't have to go to their house for the holidays. It may break your mother's heart. It may break your heart. But I guarantee you, for your mental well being and emotional well being, and eventually physical well being, it will be better. And it's really hard to do this. But just because you are born and share DNA with these people does not mean you need to be in a toxic, dark, unpleasant situation. And it doesn't mean that you need to nod your head and like you can disagree with your family and it might blow up into something really big and terrible. It might. It also might not. But do not put yourself and do not continue to feel like you have to put yourself in a toxic situation. Like, just don't do it. It sucks. I get it. But like, you will all be better for it. And if at some point, if you've exhausted yourself to say, like, these are my feelings, please respect them. These are my opinions, please respect them. And those things continue to get disrespected. You cut yourself out, and either they'll approach you right away or it'll take time for them to approach you. And maybe there will have been enough time where they can finally see, like, okay, maybe do some self-reflecting, right? Like, all right, maybe I did cross a line, and maybe they won't. But don't continue to put yourself in these toxic situations just because you feel like you have to. Like, it's family, I get it, but like,
Self-care, bitches.
and sometimes self-care is breaking up with your family. And even just certain
Yeah, and
members of your family. It doesn't have to be everybody.
yeah, it doesn't have to be everybody, and I think why this is so hard for, like, our parents' generation and the parents before is that I think they had to stomach a lot more than we do.
Because using a phrase of like they could never. Because they literally could never imagine standing up to their parents so much that like they would take a beat. You either just left the house and never talked to them again and got kicked out, right? Like, it was so extreme instead of just being like, I'm not coming for the holidays this year because I need a second. Like, I can't be in an environment where something's going to come up that is going to be upsetting, triggering, or I know we're going to get in a fight. And I'm just done doing that over the holidays. Like, we're supposed to be family. This is supposed to be a nice time. This is exhausting. I'm taking a break. Like, it doesn't, like, so I think for them, it was just like, well, it's like you said, it's my way or the highway. And if you don't like it, get the fuck out. Like, that's the way it was.
And you know something that's insane? Child psychology wasn't a thing until the 70s. Parenting
Yep.
strategies didn't really come out until the 70s and the 80s. And I'm not excusing anything. I'm not doing that. But we have to realize, and it's not our job to parent our parents. And one of the ways that I kind of thought about things was that we have more information about child rearing than anybody in the history of time.
Mhm.
We know children's brains. There's so many studies on children's brains. There's so many child psychologists. There's so many people that understand how we develop as humans today, that we become way more empathetic to our children than I think the previous generations.
Absolutely.
And I came across this like 10, 15 years ago, and I started, not, it was more than that, but like 20 years ago, and I started therapy really. And my therapist was like, well, let's blame your parents for your issues. I'm like, but why? Like, I don't need to blame my parents for anything. Yes, there are issues that I have because of how I
Sure.
grew up, but it
Sure.
is my responsibility to move forward from that. And
That's
whatever
huge.
that looks like for you, that's okay.
Mhm.
If it looks like not showing up for Christmas and you go, mom or dad or whoever, or grandpa or grandma or whomever you're going to be like, you know what? I can't do it this year. But I would challenge you to find something else to do.
Yeah.
Because
Don't
if you
wallow.
self isolate, you will just
Yep.
sit there in your sadness and you go, why is my family like this? Or why are my close relatives like this? And that will just make it even worse.
Yeah.
And one of the questions that I always like to ask when it gets into like really heated arguments with especially family members is why? Why do you believe that?
Yeah.
It's always helpful to understand where people are coming from. Again, not that I'm excusing everything, not that I'm explaining everything, but understanding where somebody is coming from is truly important for you to agree respectfully. And you go,
Yeah.
well, you believe that. you know what? Here is evidence to the contrary. Because mostly when people have extremist views on either the left or the right, they're 99% misinformed on what is happening, or disinformed, which are two different things. And I think that's where you start. You start understanding where that person is coming from. And you go, "Hey, I'm not trying to start anything. I'm not trying I just want to understand your point of view better."
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think that gets us into a a moment where it gets a lot less heated because people are like, "Oh, they want to hear from me. They want to
Yeah.
understand why I think this way."
Or like,
And I think,
can you tell me why you prioritized that over
yep,
this? I think
yep.
that's the question that I need to I'm gonna keep like a top of mind when I go into these holiday because I think like again, like you're saying, not to excuse and not that I'll like the answer, but like that's what's bugging me about a lot of things is like, how was that the priority over this other thing? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
because usually when people prioritize things differently, they don't understand. And I think I saw this quote that was wonderful. That was, "Privilege is you not caring about the things that don't affect you."
yep, yep,
And and usually when you get really heated into discussions, it's because the other person doesn't understand where you're coming from.
yep.
And openness and getting people to understand where one is coming from might not change their mind. And that's okay.
Mhm.
But what it does is open them up to go, "Oh, other people think differently."
Yep.
And eventually they get to the place where, and that's okay.
Mhm.
And of course, doesn't change our realities and doesn't change a bunch of things. But in the end, I think somebody understanding us better is better than disagreeing and going into an argument that gets us nowhere.
I love that. I think that's a lovely place to end it, to be honest with you too, because
Because and it's going to be hard, everybody. And if you need people to talk to, we are on our emails, and don't hesitate to talk to us about this. Um and I think we talked about our next show a little bit because the
yeah,
doc
because
is
I
in,
was
which is
springing it on you apparently.
super exciting, because it's one I haven't watched. I started watching it a little bit on the
Okay.
election day return, which was not the right thing to do,
Ooh.
given that it's was very anxiety producing already. And I was like, "I'm out."
Yeah. No, no,
Um, I was like, "I'm out."
no.
Um,
That's terrible.
but I think I'm in a better mind space. And remember that we've instituted my new "what the fuck" meter. And I'm excited about that. But yeah, we have the Man on the Wire, right? This doc is
Man on
in. It's
wire.
on Netflix. Man on Wire. It's on Netflix about a gentleman that wants to walk
Tightrope walk.
across this tightrope walk between the Twin Towers.
A World Trade Center.
Obviously in the 70s. And just in
Pre
case, I don't know,
2001.
pre 2001. And yeah, I'm excited about watching it. It's going to be for our next episode. Um, and again, I think we'd want to close this out with, if we have disagreements, I think we're the better for it. And I
Yep.
think we get to a place where the world is better. Don't be afraid of them. And self care,
Yes.
bitches. um,
We all
with
needed that
that note,
little bit of reminder at the end.
Yep.
We all needed
We
it.
are all bad bitches. All
Fucking
of
right.
us. All of us.
You two gentlemen. You're bad bitches and
All
I love it.
all politics are local. Um
Loco, loco.
Loco, sorry. I misheard the echo. And as always, thank you all for joining us on this episode of interesting as fuck. And as always, our emails are open to disagreements and
Yes.
other thoughts. And any comments that you have or things you want us to talk about. And on with that note, Elaine closes out.
Stay interesting.